Hey Guardians, I just want to let everyone know that I do have both a Twitch and a Twitter, and I'm very active on both. Feel free to come give me a follow on both, links in the description. So I'm sure most of you are kind of looking at the title I put there and wondering, Wicked Implement, who the hell cares about Wicked Implement? And you're right, but the title is actually not clickbait. Wicked Implement does in fact live in my inventory now. For anyone who might not be aware, Wicked Implement received something of a buff this season. Basically, previously Wicked Implement was, I believe, either a 180 or 200 RPM scout, and it had its fire rate buffed up to that of a rapid fire scout rifle. And what this means is that the slow effect from rapidly landing precision hits with Wicked Implement is actually much stronger than it was in the past, purely because it procs faster and it procs more consistently inside of gunfights. Now, does this really make Wicked Implement like an S-tier scout rifle? Honestly, not really. And admittedly, that's mainly because of the other very high tier, very strong rapid-fire scout rifles that we have in the game now that just have better dueling potential. Those would be Aisha's Embrace, of course, from Trials of Osiris, Unvoiced from the Sunder Doctrine dungeon, and of course Fang of Ute from Crota's End. Because Precision Instrument just gives free damage and can provide a TTK shifting buff to those scouts, they're just better as far as just raw killing potential goes than something like Wicked Implement really is. Now, I will say for just general PvP play, there is some potential for Wicked Implement on Prismatic Hunter purely because the slow effect will proc Stylish Executioner provided you secure the kill. However, the reason that Wicked Implement now lives in my inventory is because it is something of a counter to one of my most despised playstyles inside of Destiny 2. And that, of course, is Floatlock. Heat Rises, the guy floating, a mile and a half off the map with a scout rifle, a bow, a pulse rifle, a 120, whatever the case may be. That is an extremely annoying playstyle to fight. And so with the RPM buff, I decided to see how the slow effect from Wicked Implement could potentially mess with Heat Rises. And the reason is because when you're fighting someone who's floating off the map with a scout and Heat Rises, they tend to actually be pretty difficult to fight. Generally speaking, outside of like a sniper rifle or maybe an LFR, there isn't really any weapon in the game with both the range and the instantaneous TTK to just outright kill them. So, of course, the next best thing is to try to force them out of the air. And I have tried a variety of different weapons that I thought might be able to fill that purpose. These would be weapons such as, legendary weapons with Withering Gaze, or potentially Lemonarch was another one because of the poison effect. But the thing is, none of these weapons really removed a Floatlock's freedom of movement while in the air. They can still move just fine in the air, they can Icarus dash, they can Phoenix dive, so on and so forth. But Wicked Implement partially, keyword being partially, resolves this issue. Yeah, let's go ahead and pop it real quick.
Yep.
Does that just straight up take you out of the air?
Yep, my Heat Rises is still up, but it dropped me.
Okay.
Hit me.
Okay,
Yeah, no.
Interesting.
And like that's a good 4 seconds. Unless they're lucky and Icarus dash onto a ledge, they're not surviving.
Could you put on Wicked Implement? I want to see what that looks like from just my POV.
Alright, go for it.
Okay, yeah, so that's... I can't run, but I can Icarus dash. Okay, let me see.
And as rapid as it hits?
Charge.
Yeah, no, that is...
Yeah. So, interesting. Alright. So as you can see in the footage, when that slow effect procs from Wicked Implement, it will force them out of the air. They just immediately drop out of the air. Now they can, unfortunately, still Icarus Dash and Phoenix Dive. However, if they're floating too far off the map, they're just kind of screwed. That slow effect means they will fall to their death. And even if they don't, say they Phoenix Dive or something like that so that they can hit the ground very quickly, they'll still be slowed. You've still removed that freedom of movement for a few seconds, which could potentially allow a teammate to clean them up, or if their positioning was bad and they land out in the open, to just very easily just finish them off yourself. Now, as most of you know, I really don't like scout rifles. In fact, I actually kind of hate them. They are extremely boring to use. They cater to a very just brain-dead playstyle of just sitting, 50, 60 meters back, out of range of every other weapon in the lobby, and they're also incredibly frustrating and boring to actually fight. So I don't really use scout rifles all that often because they just bore me, and I am well aware of the fact that they make the match unpleasant for the people I'm playing against, and I would generally prefer that the people I'm playing against re-queue, especially given how awful the PvP population is right now. Obviously, there's not a ton of people inside of PvP. And as everyone knows, I absolutely despise stasis. I detest it. I think it's been bad for the game as a whole. However, again, as I've said many times before, cringe counters cringe. Right? So as far as I'm concerned, if someone is just floating off the side of the map with a bow, a scout, whatever the case may be, then they're fair game at that point. Now, I do also want to specify this is a soft counter to float locks. This is not a hard counter. Typically speaking, a competent float lock is going to have something like Phoenix Dive, something that will allow them to get out of the air very quickly. They can potentially Icarus Dash behind cover, so on and so forth. But if you catch them lacking long enough, then if nothing else, you can at the very least force them out of the air. And given that most of these float locks are running loadouts tuned specifically for long-range play, if you can force them out of the air, 9 times out of 10, they're completely useless. And of course, this is not going to work on every single map, such as on Cathedral of Dusk. It didn't really work all that well there, purely because a float lock on that map typically is going to be floating inside, and they just have a ton of cover everywhere. They can Icarus Dash behind cover, they can avoid that slow effect because the instant they start taking damage, they can just Icarus Dash or Phoenix Dive behind cover. But on maps such as Eternity, for example, or potentially Disjunction, maps like that, this does make for a pretty decent counter. I do wish I had more gameplay of this just out in the wild, but funnily enough, I actually haven't run into that many float locks, at least thus far. I'm praying it stays that way because I cannot stand playing against that garbage. But that is a playstyle that I hate enough that Wicked Implement is going to just live in my inventory in the event that, I'm playing Altar of Flame or Eternity or whatever, and there's some float lock rat just being super annoying. Wicked Implement gives me something resembling a counter to that playstyle. So if you're like me and you find that playstyle to be very annoying, then I would highly recommend picking up Wicked Implement. You can still get it, I believe, from the exotic kiosk, so just go ahead and grab it and just keep it in your back pocket, because if you run into those players, then Wicked Implement can be very helpful. But that is all from me today, Guardians. If you enjoyed this video, then do me a favor, hit that like button, leave me a comment, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button with the bell icon. And if this is something that you think you might try in the future, then do me a favor, check the description for my other links and maybe consider hitting them up. For now, I will see you on the next video. Peace, Guardians.